everybody, welcome back to Out of Body. If you're watching this in the replay, hello, welcome, and thank you for watching. Really quick before I get into some storytelling, I want to thank you guys so much for 200 subscribers. I can't believe I hit that milestone this quick. I know everybody kind of says that when they hit a milestone, but seriously, I had no idea. I feel like I just hit 100 like a few weeks ago or something. Anyway, thank you guys so much. And yeah, I did want to introduce my new little, show you guys my quirky side. I like little ghost things like this. This is, if you've ever seen The Nightmare Before Christmas, this is the ghost dog from there, Zero. He's cute. Anyway, I have little mascots like this. I got that one, and I've got this guy over here. Do a little show and tell. Got this guy. Some of you have probably seen him before. My little ghosty mascot. Anyway, yeah, if you guys are here, if you're watching, and apparently my camera is like having trouble focusing, so I do apologize for that. But anyway, if you're here and you're watching, feel free to say hi or talk to each other in the chat, whatever. I'm gonna go ahead and get into the story reading right now. And I'll take a look at the chat when I'm in between stories and everything. This first one is called The New Neighbors Are 100% Human. And I found this on Reddit, where I find all my stories. I found it in the subreddit Short Scary Stories. And the author is called Mr. Michael Squid. So that's the author for this one. And I will link all of the author's information down below when I'm done with the stream. That way, if you guys are interested in checking out their content, you can. So anyway, here's the story. The New Neighbors Are 100% Human. My therapist explicitly explained that my delusional thoughts and occasional hallucinations are just manifestations of my disorder. The medication used to help, so I know it's merely paranoia, eager to take the wheel again, and that it seeks chaos. I knew to box away the crazy thoughts that kept popping into my head when the McKay family moved in next door, because I knew they were perfectly normal neighbors. I knew their dog had 4 legs, not 6. It wasn't hiding 2 additional thin, folding limbs under loose flaps of furry skin. I knew the bark sounded like a normal dog's, not bassy with vibratory polyphonic overtones. I know their dog, like all dogs of course, had 2 eyes, and not 4 spider-like black orbs between those floppy ears when it turned to face me. That's creepy. I knew that Mr. and Mrs. and Mr. McKay smiled pleasantly when greeting me. I knew their teeth were normal, not far too thin, and far too many to fit inside pale white gums that stretched up high in a disturbingly wide smile. Mr. McKay's handshake was perfectly normal as well. No bones shifted under the skin to try and retain the hand shape as I shook it. I didn't hear those crunching and squishing and popping sounds when they greeted me in the driveway. Hey, the darkness! Thanks for checking me out. Appreciate you. Their son, Tommy, is just an adorable little rascal like any other kid on the street. Kids make faces all the time, and they play jokes and mess with animals. I know very well it was just my imagination when I looked out the window to see his jaw dislocated and hanging nearly a foot down, jiggling with unseen and impossible muscles. I saw no long needles of teeth engulfing that writhing, hissing cat before clamping down with sickening, crunching chomps. I know neighbors borrow eggs and sugar, and occasionally bring pies to the others in their cul-de-sac. It's a suburban tradition. I have no problem with that at all, and I know it's simply a matter of upping my medication, and these figments will go away. I know the McKay family is perfectly normal, and 100% human. I just wish they'd go ring the doorbell instead of staring in at me through my second story bedroom window. Woo! That's a short story, but that is creepy. I like it because the way it's written, it's made to sound like this person is seeing all these things because of their medication. But then at the end, so it kind of makes you think that, okay, their neighbors really are normal. They're not really seeing these things. The person's on medication, so it's just hallucinations. But then at the end, it says that they're staring in through his second story bedroom window. They're staring at him, and it's like, okay, at that point, you pretty much know something's up. You pretty much know that his neighbors really are what he says they are. So that's pretty freaky. I thought that was a good one. Anyway, a minute here, I'll move on to the next story. If any of y'all are watching, feel free to say hi and talk to each other in the chat if you want to. I saw the darkness was here earlier. I think the message popped away, but I'm still getting used to using the stream thing. I'm using my cell phone, and I'm using Streamlabs to do it. So, like, messages will pop up, and then they'll go away. So I don't know if anyone's still watching or not. But anyway, I'll go ahead and move on to this next story, I guess. I think there's a lag, too. So probably when you type something, I don't see it for, like, 10 or 15 seconds. But anyway, if you're watching, welcome. And I appreciate you guys watching. This next story is a little bit longer, quite a bit longer actually. So it's probably the last story I'll read tonight. I kind of just planned 2 stories since this one's so long. And this one is a series. So right now it's got 2 parts on Reddit. I'm just going to read part 1 tonight, and then next week I'll read part 2. And as far as I know from what the author said, there's going to be more parts. So that's exciting because this story is really good. Anyway, I found it on Reddit Nosleep. Surprise, surprise. It's called "We Made Up a Ghost and Now It's Killing Us." Very interesting. It's by the author, I hope I say this right, Verastahl, maybe. It's spelled Verastahl. So, Verastahl. Anyway, real quick, when I messaged him, I know he's got a website, he or she, I should say. Yeah, so his username is Verastahl. I think he actually has looks like he's got a subreddit with the r/, you know, like all the subreddits, and then Verastahl, which I'll link that down below when this stream is over as well if you want to check out his content. And then he's got a website called Verastahl.com. So he's got a website with his content, and he actually just wrote a book. He messaged me and said that he sent me a link to his newest book on Amazon. So I'll put that down there too for you guys to check out here after the stream. Anyway, let's get on to the story. This one is very, very interesting. Okay, so we made up a ghost and now it's killing us. Part 1. I just got off the phone. One of the Stonebrook 6, one of my best friends in the world, was killed last night. His husband Anthony called me, his voice raw with fatigue and emotion. He said that the police didn't know the details of what happened yet, but last night, Ellis's remains were found in the parking garage of the building where he works, or where he worked. They told Anthony that they would have thought it was an explosion, but there were no signs of any fire or damage to anything other than Ellis himself. They would have said it was an obvious murder, but they don't know how someone could crush and dismember a human being that thoroughly, without heavy machinery, much less spread him across the 12-foot ceiling of floor 3B. In that monolithic parking structure, like a thick layer of chunky peanut butter. Ooh. I'm gonna take a quick sippy here. With my whistle. Anthony was crying again at that point, so I assumed I had just heard him wrong. Then he repeated it, his voice coming in hitching gasps. A coworker had come out just a few minutes after Ellis to find my friend dripping and plopping back onto the relatively clean concrete below, where he had been pressed into the ceiling. Anthony said that the only way they even knew it was him initially was due to the security footage of him going out towards his car. The video cut out as he approached the area, and when it returned, the timestamp showed 30 seconds had passed without footage. The girl who found him was out less than 5 minutes later, and no one else had entered or left the garage in that time, so far as they could tell. Crushed personal effects and initial blood work confirmed it was him. I could feel myself teetering between arguing with Anthony that he must be wrong and breaking into tears myself. I had just seen Ellis 2 days ago when we were all together mourning the first of our circle of friends to die. Those of us that were flying back out of Chicago had ridden together to the airport, and after Mills had caught her flight back to Austin, me and Ellis had just hung out at an airport restaurant until my flight came up. Our mood had been sad because of Cassidy's funeral and everything that followed, but we were trying to make the most of the time we had left. Ellis was telling me about his wedding and showing me pictures. I still felt guilty for not making it in person, but I had just started my new job at the time. Ellis, like always, understood and worked to make me feel better about it. I told him a little bit about the girl I'd been dating. The relationship was still improving after 6 months, which was a record for me. Ellis said that very thing, but then quirked an eyebrow at me. He asked if I had realized how I was looking at Mills the past couple of days, and I tried to play it off like he was joking, but I knew he wasn't. In that subtle way he was trying to nudge me to consider if I was still in love with Millicent. That's a pretty name, Millicent. Like I had been when we were growing up. But my head was too full already from everything else, so I pushed the question away, gave him a hug, and headed back to my flight. That was the last time I talked to Ellis before something tore him apart. Hey, darkness. Oh, now they went away. This is so weird. Like, the messages are popping up and then going away. So, oh, there we go. Okay, I figured it out. Oh, you tweeted the stream. Thanks, the darkness. I appreciate it. Hey, Budget Bushcraft. Appreciate you coming by. Oh, it went away. Why is it doing that? That's annoying. Okay. Just stopped by to say hi and good night. Thanks, Budget Bushcraft. I appreciate it. Have a good night. I appreciate it. Dislike all. Oh, hey! Hey, Andy. Nice to see you. Dislike all is my friend Andy. So yeah, I think I figured out how to do this chat anyway. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Now I'm like typing something that I didn't mean to. Okay, go away. Go away. Oh goodness, guys, I am such an idiot when it comes to these things. Okay, well. Okay, that did something. Now you're looking at my lights. Oh gosh, I apologize. Oh, there we go. We're back. Okay. If you're watching this in the replay, I am so sorry. This is probably really annoying. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so getting back to my story here. Welcome, Andy. Hi, if you're still watching, if anyone's still watching me right now. I am reading the story called, We Made Up a Ghost, and Now It's Killing Us. So I'm reading that story. It's found on Reddit Nosleep. I'm just going to continue on here. Basically, if you're just now tuning in, it's about this guy who just lost his best friend, one of his best friends. The guy was found, like, dead and hanging off the ceiling at this place where he works. So that's pretty much where I'm at here. So they just found out about his death. Okay. Okay, you can see me. Thanks, Andy. Okay, moving on. I hung up with Andy. I hung up with Anthony after an hour, my throat raw and a feeling of exhaustion weighing down my every step as I went to the bedroom and collapsed onto the bed. I wanted to cry, but I couldn't, as though the engine of my heart was too busy burning through gallons of fear and guilt to allow even a drop of sadness into its chambers. I tried to sleep, but after a while I gave up on that as well, and I began to write this account. Pardon me. I need to get it all out and away from me. I realize that I've jumped in at the middle of this rather than starting from the beginning. I'm tired and not thinking straight. Let me provide a bit of background, and then I'll talk about Cassidy's funeral and everything that happened after it. I had 4 best friends growing up: Ellis Macquarie, Millicent Davis, Thomas Wall, and Cassidy Friel. I think we were unique among many groups of childhood friends in that we had all come together at the same time in Mrs. Weber's 3rd grade classroom. And we're all equally close to each other. Aside from occasional childish arguments, we never fought with each other, and as we got older, we somehow managed to safely navigate the choppy, hormonal seas of 2 pairs of hetero guys and girls, and a 3rd guy that was gravitating towards bi-curiosity. This is important because as I start to question my memories about so many things, I keep returning to my idea of my friendships with the people closest to me. Ellis, who was always the kindest of us. Mills, who was the smartest and kept the rest of us out of trouble on several occasions. Thomas, who was always so moody around others, but so light and happy when it was just the 5 of us. And Cassidy, who was shy and sweet, and I now think died terrified. I don't have any close family left. My father died when I was 15, and my mother doesn't like talking to me anymore. My old friends fall into 2 categories: college friends that I rarely keep in touch with beyond social media, and my best friends from my days at Stonebrook. It sounds strange because we didn't meet at Stonebrook, which was our middle and high school before it was closed. We had spent 3 years together at Jackson Elementary across town, and were just as close then as we were later. But it was almost like our group identity wasn't fully cemented until we got to Stonebrook. Wet my whistle again here. Y'all hanging in there? Okay. 5th grade rumor was that the place had been a small college 50 years earlier, and I do think that was true. It was certainly an old building, and the shape and layout of the rooms retained faint traces of its early life. The building was shaped roughly like a hash mark, with 2 long, wide corridors intersected perpendicularly by 2 other long, wide corridors. The center square of these crisscrossed lines was filled by a small gymnasium that actually had a pool underneath its motorized floor. That's interesting. Though the floor was kept locked, and the pool had supposedly been long drained dry. That's weird. They wouldn't even use the pool that's there. But the age and uniqueness of this school, its quiet sense of history and mild creepiness, it had an effect on us. We stuck together even more than usual, making few outside friends. We worked to get into the same classes, and the few times when one of us was by ourselves, the wait until the bell rang was interminable. It was during one of these isolated classes when I first thought about the school being haunted, and even now, having talked about everything this past weekend with the others, that's still one of my few clear memories of our time at Stonebrook. Some small idea, an idle daydream, a simple what if. What if the school was haunted by a ghost? I got the news about Cassidy's death last Wednesday. It was Thomas that called me, just as he had called the others. After I had moved away at 15, After Stonebrook, school was closed. The group had drifted apart. Thomas and Cassidy had stayed the closest. In sophomore year of college, they had gotten married. In the 10 years since, they had generally seemed happy the few times we talked or got together, but I knew they had ups and downs. Thomas had told me on the phone that they had been legally separated for the past 3 months, but were trying to work things out for themselves and their little girl. And then Cassidy had gone missing one morning and was found 5 hours later in the groundskeeper's shed of the park across the street from their apartment. The police were investigating it as a potential homicide due to the strangeness of the death, but there were no leads. Thomas had been on duty at the hospital where he worked as a physician's assistant, so his alibi was solid. Worse was that she seemed to have been drowned, despite being in a dry room with no clues as to how she got there. I couldn't get into Chicago until the morning of the funeral, but afterward we all went back to Thomas's house. They had been living together during the separation, which doesn't make sense to me if you're separated, but we'll roll with that. So they had been living together even though they were separated. And as the four of us sat around in his living room, I found myself looking out the window at the park across the street, wondering where the shed was where my friend had been found. We had been talking about Cassidy for the last 3 hours, telling funny stories and listening to Thomas go on emotional monologues about how much he loved her and how he had failed her, which was always followed by us reassuring him that she had loved him too, and that none of this was his fault. He would always glance at me at this point, and I would try to give him a comforting smile, hoping it was enough, because I didn't know what else to say. But as the evening wore on, you could feel the conversational momentum grinding to a halt. It was just past 8, but our tiredness and sadness was palpable. Still, I looked at Thomas, and I knew that his daughter was staying at his parents' house overnight. And I hated the thought of him being alone. So at the next lull, I suggested some or all of us spend the night with him. He looked like he was going to argue, but then he nodded with a weary look in his eyes. He said, "Yeah, I think I'd like that. For any of you that want to, though, I know some of you have already paid for rooms." Millicent grinned. "My hotel looked like shit anyway." Ellis murmured in agreement, and I felt a slight buoyancy that I had found a small way to help. But that's when I ruined everything. I said, "The Stonebrook Six are back together again." As soon as I said the words, I regretted them. I had meant it as a joke, overly dramatic and silly proclamation to get a cheap laugh out of the others. But as soon as I said it, I realized that Cassidy, our other friend, was barely in the ground, and I was talking about us all being together. Thomas glared at me, while Mills started shaking her head, her eyes wide. "Why would you say that?" Ellis's tone was more hurt than accusatory. "Why the hell would you say that, Alex?" I felt like I could hardly breathe, my eyes roving between the three of them. Crap. I'm so sorry. That was so stupid. I'm just not used to Cassidy being gone. And Thomas stood up, his expression hard. "This isn't about Cassidy. Why would you call us the Stonebrook Six again? Is that some kind of joke to you?" Mills was on her feet now, putting herself between me and him. "Tom, chill out. He doesn't remember. You know that." Thomas glanced down at her, his face reddening. "Then how the hell does he remember the Stonebrook Six?" I was growing more confused and alarmed by the second. That's what we called ourselves. I remember we called ourselves that, the Stonebrook Six. It was a joke." Ellis had stood up now, too, moving closer to me. "Okay, Alex, that's right, sort of. But do you remember why it was a joke?" I could feel tears stinging in my eyes now. I didn't understand why everyone was so mad at me, especially if they weren't mad about me saying it with Cassidy gone. I said, it was because there were only 5 of us. We were talking about nicknames one day, and about how our group should have one as a joke. We talked about calling ourselves the Stonebrook 5 for some reason, but ended up all agreeing that the Stonebrook 6 sounded cooler, like an outlaw gang. So we called ourselves the Stonebrook 6, even though there were only 5 of us. Thomas took a step closer. That's bullshit. Such bullshit. You know, I've never fully believed your convenient "I don't remember" shit. But how the hell are you pulling out shit like that? He says shit a lot. How the hell are you pulling out shit like that and not remembering what it really was? Mills gave him a shove that didn't move him but got his attention. Back off him. He's not lying. He lost more than we did, so try to remember that. Mills' glare melted away as she turned back to look at me. Alex, it's not exactly what you think. A lot happened, and, well, you blocked out most of the bad, I think. We don't understand how or why you don't remember, but you need to know that we believe you and we love you. Thomas snorted. Typical. Alex makes Cassidy's funeral day about him. Ellis shot him a dark look. Button it, dude. We all loved Cassidy. You don't have the market cornered on missing her. Looking back down, he gave me a sad smile. Alex, what were you saying about how we started calling ourselves the Stonebrook 6? That never happened. We started calling ourselves the Stonebrook 6 because of the professor. And if you're hearing, like, sounds in the room, don't be alarmed. I've got neighbors upstairs, so it makes it a little creepier, I guess, if you hear little stomps and stuff. Just adds to the mood. Anyway, back to the story. I felt a rush of fear running through my body at the name. My mouth went dry, and I shot up like the room was on fire. No, what? No. Mills looked at Ellis. You shouldn't have said anything. You should have left it alone. Ellis shrugged. I didn't bring it up, but he has a right to know. Alex, do you remember the professor? I shook my head violently and started trying to move past him out of the room. No, I don't want to talk about this. Thomas caught me in a strong grip and pulled me into a bear hug that was equal parts angry and equal parts loving. We're going to talk about it, Ro. I think it's time. Mills was yelling at him, but he went on. The professor was the 6th person in the Stonebrook 6. It was the... And then he broke off. I shoved him hard enough that he lost his grip and went staggering back into a low coffee table, his arms pinwheeling as he tried to regain his balance before sitting down hard enough on the small table that one of the legs gave way and sent him sprawling onto the floor. For my part, I imagined I looked like a trapped animal, but that was okay, because that's exactly what I felt like. Mills had her hands raised as she stepped forward and touched my cheeks. Sweetie, it's okay. We should probably go ahead and talk a little about it now, just so you're not confused anymore. Is that okay? I still wanted to run, but her cool, smooth hands on my face were like a soothing balm. I nodded reluctantly, looking down at Thomas. Are you okay, man? He stood up slowly and gave me a slight smile. Yeah, I'm sorry. I was being an asshole. Are we cool? I nodded. Sure, man. I'll replace the table. I'm just really freaked out at the moment. Mills stepped back and nodded. I know. So let's try talking it out, and if you reach a point you get too scared, we'll stop, okay? Okay, I paused, and then pushed on, my eyes going between Melissa and Ellis. So who was the professor? Ellis is the one who answered. The professor? It was a ghost. The one we made up. The one that hurt all those people. And that's part 1. So it leaves you off with, Okay, you know who the Stonebrook sixth person was. It's the ghost that they made up. So them and their friends. This story reminds me of stuff me and my friends did when I was a kid in elementary school. We would make up like ghost stories and stuff too. And so this one I can completely relate to, although I'm glad the ghosts that we made up didn't actually come true. So anyway, but this is interesting because it sounds like this ghost is actually maybe real and maybe killing their friends off. So anyway, next week I'll read part 2. So if you want to stay tuned for that next week. See, I think I saw something pop up here. Uh-oh, I just hear you. Can you guys not see me anymore? Well, if you can at least hear me, that's the main thing. Because it's storytelling, so. Not to worry about it if you can't see me. It's probably better if you can't. Okay, you can hear me too. Hopefully you can hear me and see me. Oh, you don't hear the neighbors. Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah. Okay, well that's good. Yeah, it's, I mean, I love my neighbors, but it's just this building is like, the walls are really thin and the ceiling is, I mean, it's just not very insulated, so you can hear like elephant footsteps, you know. So anyway, that is where my storytelling ends. I appreciate you guys coming out, those of you who came out to watch this, and yeah, I'll be doing this every Friday night. I'll try to do it every Friday night anyways, at 9 o'clock Central Standard Time, yes. My time zone. 10 p.m. Eastern, I guess. So anyways, yep, that's it for this week. Next week I'll be reading part 2 of that ghost story, and I'll probably have another short, scary story to read then too. So anyway, if you like this, give it a thumbs up, and I will see you guys next time. Have a good night. Bye-bye.